All right. Well, welcome to the Planning Commission's very first teleconference only meeting. The City Council has done this a couple of times. It's our first effort. And before I call the meeting to order, I would like to read a statement on why we're doing this. Due to the COVID-19 emergency and related public health officer orders, Planning Commission meetings will be held by teleconference only until further notice. In compliance with the state and county shelter-at-home orders and as allowed by the Governor's Executive Order N2920, which allows for a deviation of teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act, Planning Commission meetings will be held by teleconference only. Rather than attending in person, public must call 805-865-7276 to participate via phone. Or written public comments can be submitted via email to planning@prcity.com prior to noon on the day of the Planning Commission meeting and will be posted as an addendum to the agenda online. A video stream of Planning Commission meeting presentations will be live streamed and available to play later on YouTube by accessing www.prcity.com/YouTube. So with that, I will call the Planning Commission meeting for April 28th, 2020 to order. And I must say I don't have a video. All I have is, I have a good audio, but I don't have a video.
So why don't you refresh your browser and see if the YouTube feed will restart for you. There is about a 15-second delay, it looks like.
All right.
Do you have a video now?
I'm still, I have video, but I have the April 20th DRC.
So you need to, I think, refresh and click on the live feed. There should be a live feed that's tonight's meeting.
Can other commissioners see the video?
Yes.
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 All right. I have it. All right. Okay, we call the meeting to order at this time. Let us join in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
So, Chairperson,
I pledge allegiance.
Let's make sure everybody mutes their microphones before we start. Roberta, don't mute yours.
All right, are we ready?
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're ready?
Yes, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. All right, and staff, may we have roll call?
Commissioner Christensen?
Present.
Commissioner Gibson?
Present.
Commissioner Davis? Commissioner Castillo? Commissioner
Commissioner
Kogler?
Castillo advised us that he would not be available tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Kogler?
Present.
Commissioner Neal?
Present.
Chairperson Jorgensen?
Present.
So the record will reflect that Commissioner Castillo and Davis are absent.
All right, may we have staff introductions?
Yes, Warren Frace, I'm the Community Development Director. Online, we have the city engineer, David Athy, and our planner, Lori Wilson. And then within the dais here, or the chamber, we have Darcy Delgado and Darren Nash.
All right, thank you. Now, Mr. Price, will you be advising us of incoming phone calls from the public?
Yes. So why don't you open it up for general public comments? I'll check and see if we actually have any.
All right, so I will open up our meeting now to general public comments regarding matters that are not on tonight's agenda.
Yep. So it appears we have no public comments.
All right. And are there any agenda items proposed to be tabled or rescheduled?
There are none.
All right, let us proceed on to our agenda then. Agenda item number 1 is conditional use permit 20-01 for Victory Outreach Church. And may we have a staff report?
Good evening, everybody. This is Lori.
Hi, Lori.
And hi. Hopefully, in just a moment, you'll have up on your screen the presentation for the church.
Should be up now, Lori.
Okay. So, and it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and just skip to the second slide for the site location map. Okay. So the first item before you tonight is a use permit for Victory Outreach Church. It doesn't appear my YouTube screen's not working. Are you able to see the site location map right now?
The site location map is up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not for me yet.
we're now
Sorry
in the
I
third.
still have, this is Mark. I still have the cover sheet, the conditional use permit title. Now I've got the site location map.
Okay, so the church is looking to go into this building here off of Tuley Road. It's shaded there in blue for you in the center of the screen. It's just east of Golden Hill Road and the Golden Hill and Union Road intersection. So they're looking to occupy 2 units there within the building. It's a total of 8 units that occupy it. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the request tonight before the commission is to establish a church use at this building. Their assembly times are generally all in the evenings, aside from their Sunday service. So they're looking to hold services on Sundays from 9 to 3 p.m. And then Wednesday and Thursday evenings for youth group services and a special midweek service from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And then various Saturdays, again in the evening, starting at 7 to 8:30. And those would be limited to 1 a month. They're for special events. Aside from that, the other use that they're looking to have is office hours on Mondays. That would be in the morning from 8 to 11. But Pastor Pete has indicated that it would only just be him coming in for those times. So again, they're looking to just be in the evenings and then on Sundays. Next screen, please. So the use of this church, based on the size of this church, it does trigger a requirement of 15 parking spaces that they would need. You'll see to the left of the site plan, shaded in gray is where the church would be going. And then all the yellow parking, or all the parking spaces highlighted in yellow is what's assigned particularly to this building on this parcel. So they're required to have 15. They have
I was there. I can hear it now, but they couldn't hear me.
Hello?
It sounds like Commissioner Davis has been able to join us.
Okay.
I'm present. Can you hear me, Roberta?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. I have been here all along. Thank you.
Should I go on?
Yes, please.
Okay. So again, they're required to have 15 spaces. They do have 26 available to them, along with 2 accessible spaces. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So they do share the building with a few neighboring businesses, machinists, warehousing, manufacturing, all with a pretty low need for parking. Probably the highest need would be for the CrossFit gym that's there. The property management company, they've indicated that the CrossFit lease does restrict them to Monday through Friday early morning classes, and then also evening classes. So Pastor Pete's worked with them. They've said that they close at 6:30. So that's the reason why they're proposing their church assembly times to start so late at 7. So again, just to kind of an overview, their proposed times would be for Sundays, and then Saturday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening. And then Pastor Pete would like to use it for office hours on Monday morning. They provided us with, at the bottom of this slide, you can see some information on their lease that they're going to be signing. And what it's saying is that they should be, adhering to the normal shared parking during regular business hours. But the lease is going to grant them, along with our use permit, to use all of those 26 spaces. But it would be restricted to the dates and the time in our permit. Next slide, please. So this building, it's located in the C3 zone, which does allow for churches subject to conditional use permit, which is really just to ensure that they're going to be compatible with their neighboring businesses. So staff has added conditions to this project, which intends to regulate the meeting times and then also the total occupancy allowed. So they'd be allowed up to 40 people maximum per assembly times. That was across the board for Saturdays, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Sundays. The next slide. So before the commission tonight, your options would be to approve draft resolution A, subject to the conditions of approval that we've tied to it, regulating hours of operation and occupancy. You can approve it with amended conditions, refer back to staff for additional analysis, or deny it with findings of denial. So with that, I will open it up to questions. If you want to go to the last slide, the next slide, Warren, there's a site plan we can have up during questions. And I believe we should have Pastor Pete on the line too to help us out if there's anything additional. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. I think, commissioners, if it's all right with you, what I'd like to do is call on you one at a time to avoid any more confusion than we need in this circumstance. So I will start with Commissioner Christensen. Do you have any questions of staff?
I think the only question I have is I didn't get to see the lease information, but I trust that it's there. I think I was the one who recommended that the applicant go get it. So I think that would solve the issue of parking for me. I just did have one question for the pastor, and what is his plan for potential growth? And does he see that happening in the next couple years, or do they have a plan as a church? Have they thought about that? And
Commissioner Christensen, let's ask staff questions now, and then when we open the public hearing, we'll hear from the applicant, and then please ask your question at that point. Is that all right?
Sure. Then basically my question goes to staff. Have they spoken to the pastor about the question that I just mentioned? And basically, has he given them some kind of plan or concept for what the church plans for growth? How's that?
Sure, yeah, we did. This is Lori. We did talk about that. Originally, the project description with the hours of operation they submitted was just for Sundays and Wednesdays. So we talked a little bit further, about growth potential and any other possible times that he might be interested in. And that's when he thought, when they did start growing, they would start providing more youth services. and thought that Wednesday evenings would be appropriate for that. So he did add on that, just thinking about growth, but I think the space too is probably limits the amount of the occupancy that they can have in there. So we will have to leave it up to him to address this too, to talk about, if they foresee going over the 40 people that they've indicated would be their maximum.
Great. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Kogler, do you have any questions of staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually saw this at DRC, so I don't have too many. The parking was something, as Ty said, we talked about quite a bit. The only question I have, Lori, is you commented about the hours and the various operations that occur during the week, and you mentioned Pastor Pete being in the office. I assume there's nothing to really preclude him from going into the office and doing work at any time he needs to, is there, regardless of the hours?
Right, that's true. I mean, if it's just him going in to do, office work, and then he's abiding by the lease agreement, which allows for regular shared parking during Monday through Friday. So yeah, that's correct. He'd be able to do that.
All right, thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Neal, do you have any questions of staff?
I do not. I too was at DRC and had all my questions answered. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Davis.
No, I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just wanted to ask staff just confirmation in reading the proposed resolution. There actually is no limitation or wording that actually limits him from having 40 attendees. That's just what is being portrayed in the application. Is that not correct?
The project conditions will be an exhibit of the resolution, and that outlines the hours of operation and the occupancy.
All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
All right, thank you. All right, any additional questions from commissioners? All right, hearing none, I will open the public hearing. And if the applicant would like to speak, we would like to hear from you at this point.
Hi, I'm here.
If you could state your name and address for the record, we would appreciate it.
Yes, my name is Pastor Pete Torres. I'm here with my wife. We got you on the speaker on our phone, and we're watching the YouTube on the iPad. And my address currently is 2827 Black Horse Lane in Paso Robles, California. And yeah, we're here for the conditional use hearing. Thank you, Lori, for everything you've been doing, and for all of you taking the time to hear this out. It's been a little bit of a process for us to get to where we're at right now. So we just want to thank all you guys for your time. I guess the one question that I saw come up, and I heard it right now, was the question of what we intend to do for church growth. Well, we're a church, and we're here to reach the city. We're here to make an impact. Victory Outreach, we are an international ministry. We're an inner city ministry. We have Victory homes around the world. We're reaching the drug addict, the gang member, the person coming out of prison, and we're seeing lives that are changed right here in the city of Paso Robles. We've seen people come out of the river bottoms, strung out on heroin, that are now preaching the gospel, and whose life has been changed, and their families are being restored. And so we have just testimony after testimony of the impact that we intend to make, and we are making here in the city. I'm in talks. I talk to the police departments. They know us. I sit on the PAC board for parole, so I'm a resource when somebody paroles. I'm a resource for them. We're a frontline ministry. We're in the streets. We evangelize, and we really believe that this is what's needed because of the things that have been happening here in the city of Paso Robles with the drug use and the overdoses and just overall problems. And so this church that we are putting here is going to be a beacon to be able to, for people to be able to have a place of refuge, to know that if they want to get a hold of God, this is where it can take place at. And we have success rates all around the world. And so as far as there being 40 people, for now, yes. Will there be growth? God willing, there is growth. And I guess we're going to have to address that when it does happen. But for the size of the building and for the amount of space and everything that's involved in this building, I believe that it does have room for growth. And so we are signing a 5-year lease. And then after the 5-year lease, we intend to either purchase our own building or renew the lease or go into something bigger. But when you're talking about, reaching people for the kingdom of God, I don't want to put a limit on God, because I serve a limitless God that doesn't have a lid on him. And so I guess for now, yes. I mean, with the coronavirus and everything that's going on, I can't even assemble in this building for probably at least another month or two. But I still want to be able to get in there, get the conditional use, sign the lease agreement, and get going on this, so that when this virus, the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted, there will be a place for people to come back to. So I intend on reaching people here in the city and making an impact here in this community. So do I have a plan? I believe that the building can be able to hold more than 40 people on a Sunday service, but that is about where we're at right now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Pete. Do the commissioners have any questions of the applicant? All right. Hearing none. Thank you. And now, are there any members of the general public who have called with questions or comments?
We have no public callers.
All right, then I will close the public hearing. And are there any, I don't believe then we have any outstanding questions for staff. So does would the commission like to make their comments on this item? And again, I think I will just go through and call by name just to avoid confusion. So let's do it the same order. Commissioner Christensen.
I don't have any further comments. I can appreciate what the pastor is striving for, but I'm glad that I hope he does grow beyond the 40 people, and that's for sure. No, I think it looks covered, and it looks like they've got adequate parking for more than what was required. So I'm happy that they got that information into the lease, and I wish them the best.
Very good. Commissioner Kogler?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah, just more a question for staff, I guess, a follow-up to the one that was offered earlier. Talking for a minute about the 40 people maximum condition. The question of staff would be, is that enforceable? Can the church grow to 42, 45, 60? What is the limitation that might be put upon this church meeting there under the conditions of this? Is 40 a hard and fast number that if they went more than that, they would have to come back and modify this permit?
Commissioner Kogler, this is Darren Nash. What they're requesting for is the 40 people. One of the conditions also requires that they go to the building department to get a tenant improvement plan. With that tenant improvement plan, that'll be the limit of the number of people they can have in the building per the building code. So I think this was kind of Commissioner Christensen's kind of comment early, was the growth beyond the 40 people. We really don't have an enforcement, but except for this conditional use permit and these conditions. So they are limited to the 40 people. And if there was some kind of complaint or something that they had more, then I think that's something that staff would have to look into and work with the pastor on.
Darren, let me sort that out just a little bit more, because I thought I heard you say that really the governing aspect of attendance is the building component of the project, the compliance with the building requirements of the city, so to speak. And if it has an occupancy load of 100 people, does that really mean it's 100 people and we're just kind of using 40 at the moment as a placeholder for the purposes of accessing maybe parking demand or something?
We've designed this use permit for the number of people that they've requested. So once they get over that amount, they need to come back and amend this conditional use permit. The good thing would be is if the building holds 100 people, then maybe we could accommodate that by amending the use permit. But we're designing this with the applicant's request at the 40.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Neal, do you have any comments or questions?
I do not. I think probably the limiting factor on the amount of people is the number of restrooms. So that would probably limit it to something closer to the 40 than the 100, but that's just a statement.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Davis?
Yes, I'm satisfied with the parking situation, and I recall reading somewhere in the staff report, I can't find it at this moment, that the property manager was comfortable and there's flexibility in parking spaces. So I'm comfortable with the amount and wish the church well. That's my only comment.
Thank you. And Commissioner Gibson?
Thank you. I concur with what I'm hearing. The gentleman's sentiment is that I think there's adequate parking based upon the number of spaces there, and based upon the other tenants. It would seem like whenever the church is operating is when the rest of the businesses have gone home, and there would seem to be a plethora of parking spaces, and it would seem like the concerns have been addressed in the addendums. So I don't have any concerns, and I also wish Pastor Pete well.
Thank you. So if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
If I might point something out, this is Commissioner Christensen, and just wanted to recap on that really quick. The reason I brought it up, because I do think that the parking allows for a greater number of people eventually, or more people, and I do expect them to grow, and I think that would be a good thing. That's why I'm glad that we clarified the parking with the actual owner and the management company. So that's to the benefit of the applicant, and so I think that's why I'm more than satisfied, because of the amount of parking that is available. So thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. This is Joel. This is Commissioner Neal. Sorry.
Commissioner Neal.
I move to approve the draft resolution A, approving the proposed conditional use permit 20-001, subject to the site-specific conditions of approval.
I second
that.
Who was the first second?
I think Commissioner Davis was in there.
All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Neal, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, may we have a vote?
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, thank you. Pastor Pete, I'm confident the Victory Outreach Church is going to be a great benefit to our Paso Robles community, and I wish you great success. All right, let us move on to agenda item number 2. Conditional use permit 19-10, Plan Development 19-12 for the Paso Robles Horse Park.
Madam Chairperson,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Gibson. I have a conflict of interest, so I am going to be recusing myself and putting myself on mute and not participating on this item.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Gibson. All right. Let's open this up to the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. This is a conditional use permit and development plan request to amend the original entitlements for the Paso Robles Horse Park. The project applicant is
this Darcy?
Yes, this is Darcy Delgado.
All right. Thank you.
So the project applicant is the Paso Robles Horse Park, and they are calling into the meeting and will be available to help answer questions later in the meeting. So hopefully you see the vicinity map. The horse park is located at the south end of Hughes Parkway, which is accessed via Airport Road and Airport Road to Dry Creek Road. So this item is an amendment to the conditional use permit and development plan for the horse park, which was originally approved in early 2012. The horse park is part of an overall 67-acre site, of which 39 acres is actively used. The competitive equestrian events are held about 6 months during the year, which is typically April and May, and again, they pick up from September through December. Obviously, when it's wet, they don't have any events. The shows generally go from Wednesday to Sunday. And I have a graphic included showing the existing park. I just wanted to kind of point out that the various components, including the parking areas. They have an RV camping area for 28 spaces, and those are only utilized during events and for persons participating with the event. They are not available for general transient lodging. Other areas of the park include the arenas, the fields, horse stalls, and some open spaces. And lastly, as part of the original conditional use permit, the equestrian events were limited to a maximum of 8 shows per year for a total of 40 competition days per year. So that's the current horse park as it stands today. So the horse park is now looking to expand the use of their facilities and modify their original entitlements. Specifically, they're wanting to expand the park by 4.18 acres, and this includes approximately a 3.5-acre parcel, which was recently acquired, but it's still pending a lot line adjustment, as well as a 0.62-acre parcel, both of which are to the north of the park. And I have a map to show you where those parcels are located. So they also want to relocate a maintenance building, which was originally approved with the horse park, but it hasn't been constructed yet. So they feel that the new location would better suit the overall operation of the facility. They also want to increase their competitive events from 8 to 15 shows per year, which would be a total of 75 days per year of having people on site for the equestrian events. The applicant is looking to increase the short-term RV spaces from the 28 to the 56 total spaces. They'd also like to be able to include the community outreach events with when horses are on the property. And lastly, the approval of the lot line adjustment, which would merge the 3.5-acre parcel with the larger park parcel. This is something that, pending tonight's action, the lot line adjustment would be a staff level approval. So the next slide I have, and bear with me if you don't have it yet, it should show the overall project site with the adjacent parcels. So I've highlighted in pink the 3.5-acre parcel. Again, that's pending the lot line adjustment, and that would merge with the main project site parcel. The smaller 0.62-acre parcel has its own APN. The applicant, I believe they've already purchased made a transaction to purchase the land, but tonight's action, expanding the development plan would include that parcel. So the next slide, which should be coming up momentarily, shows the proposed phasing plan that would establish the project's changes from the original approval. So since the horse park has already been constructed and is operating under the original conditional use permit and development plan, staff is calling the original park area Phase 1, and the proposed expansion would be considered Phase 2. And I just think it's important to note that the distinction between the phases is reflected in the draft resolution A and the corresponding exhibits. The conditions of approval have been broken down into operational conditions since they would really affect both phases 1 and 2, especially increasing the number of events occurring. Obviously, it would affect the whole site. So wanted to kind of clarify that, as well as the construction-related conditions. Those would be primarily affecting phase 2, with the exception of the new RV spaces proposed in phase 1. So coming up shortly, I've kind of zoomed in on the expansion area on the site plan. Wanted to call out the location for the maintenance building. It's about 4,000 square feet. They're going to create a DG pad, and they're proposing to have a 20-foot wide access road leading up to that maintenance building. Also, the additional 28 RV spaces would bring the grand total to 56 RV spaces. All spaces would continue to be used for short-term equestrian events and only be available to the event competitors or trainers. The applicant has also indicated that they would like to use the extra acreage as overflow parking as needed for events. And in order to be consistent with the existing parking criteria that was established with the original development plan and use permit, staff has added a condition to make any parking area all-weather surface and to also add a soil binding agent, which would help to control dust. So the next slide should be coming up, which would show the proposed maintenance building. It'll be made of the same materials as other existing structures already on the property, which includes the bathrooms and the hay barn. And the materials for the wall and roof are both made of corrugated metals, and they're using a neutral color palette for that building. So the next slide shows the typical event schedule for the horse park. One of the concerns that was raised by a commissioner prior to tonight's meeting was related to traffic from the horse park, especially during the summer months. As we know, we have the Ravine Water Park, which is open. The horse park did provide us their schedule for 2020, and it's included in this presentation. It shows that they do not hold equestrian events during the summer, and the reason for that is it's just simply too hot for the horses. Also, the applicant is wanting to use the park for some additional limited events, but it's not expected to be a regular occurrence at the park, so this would be like dog agility shows or soccer games. The traffic study that was done for this, for the project changes, did take this into account. No additional conditions of approval have been added at this point. So the options before the commission tonight would be to approve the proposed modifications, which are reflected in draft resolution A. That would approve the conditional use permit 1910 and plan development 1912, subject to the conditions of approval. Alternative options would be to approve the project with modifications. You could refer the project back to staff or DRC for additional analysis, or you could also deny the project by adopting findings of denial. With that, I'd like to open it up for any questions you might have of staff, and I'd like to remind you we do have the applicant calling in as well as the applicant's engineer, traffic engineer, sorry.
All right, thank you, Darcy. Let's do the same way. I'll do a different order of commissioners, and if you will let me call on you before you ask questions, since we can't see each other. Let's start with Commissioner Davis.
Okay, thank you very much. Darcy, I have a couple of questions. Just give me a nod. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Could you explain, it sounds exciting. I love this project. I'll say this from the get-go, a beautiful venue. But could you explain their plans for expanded community outreach? What does that mean exactly?
So they have different events that they want to expand on. And so there's some events that would be community events that are horse related, and that would be reflected in condition number 6 of Exhibit A. So the clinics and community outreach events, I might have the applicant expand on that a little bit more. I myself am not. I don't know much about horses or what goes on at these types of functions. But the intent for that is that we're recognizing that in addition to competitions occurring, there's going to be other events. They might be more geared towards locals, perhaps, people who have horses, but they are geared towards equestrian-related events. So then in addition to that, the traffic study had taken a look at other ancillary events that the facility might host, like agility dog shows or occasional soccer games. And so there, as it stands right now, there's no conditions to kind of acknowledge that, but certainly the facility is capable of hosting certain additional events, but those would be unrelated to equestrian.
Okay, and is there any cap on that community component? I mean, I love the fact that it's having the community use the facility too, but is there any restrictions on the extent to which they can do so?
So the only thing that staff has added into the conditions that might limit them would be, or I guess the way it's phrased right now, it says, due to the outdoor nature of these functions, event days are limited by weather conditions, daylight hours, and time of year. We can certainly, the commission, if the commission chooses to expand on that and, pick a number of days that makes more sense, I think that's definitely, an opportunity to kind of expand on that condition.
Yeah, just to clarify, the extent to which it'll be used year round in maybe those months where they're not having that competitions. My next question, I know they're proposing to increase 28 to 56 RV spaces. Delicate question, but is there any TOT attached to those? I know it's limited to competitors and trainers, but I'm just wondering how that might compete with our lodging industry.
Certainly. So staff, it was kind of I brought to staff's attention the issue of the TOT. TOT is handled in our municipal code. If the horse park is renting them out, if there's a transaction, and then it seems that the TOT would be applicable in this case. We're working with finance to determine if the horse park is paying TOT, will need to pay TOT, and if this would increase that. I think that regarding the conditional use permit, since it's already required in our municipal code for TOT to be paid, I don't think the conditional use permit will need to require anything in addition.
Okay, so not in the CUP. The reason I ask is 28 additional spaces and perhaps increase to 75 days could, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong with my math, it could be 2,100 room nights. So it's just a consideration, just a question that I have. And lastly, my last question has to do with traffic, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this. I'm not sure in the first development, and I'm not sure, Darcy, if you were involved in that or somebody else. But when and it is regarding the traffic study, when there are big rigs coming in and out, has there ever been any consideration, gosh, if we get Dry Creek Road repaved, of you having access to 46 West or encouraging the attendees to use 46 West rather than crossing at Airport and 46? Has there been any dialogue about routing the participants in that fashion for safety and congestion reasons?
And this is Darren. There wasn't any specific requirements, conditions on this project to use Dry Creek out to Jardine, if that's what you're referring to. But the original traffic study did take in consideration the activity of this facility and the impacts to Airport Road. Highway 46 and those turning movements. I do know that we have the traffic engineer on the phone and might be able to answer more specifically your questions, but it's my understanding that this amendment was taken into consideration and the trips related to it, and no new conditions were necessary per the traffic engineer. But I understand your question, and I think it's probably a good one for the traffic engineer to expand on.
Hi, this is David Athey, city engineer. I was going to break in real quick. So the traffic engineer, W-Trans, recommended that the applicants adjust their showtime schedules during the week to minimize traffic entering and exiting the site from the 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Peak hours on Airport Road. So that's a condition in Exhibit A, number 13, that they'll have to comply with as they move forward if this is approved tonight. So this will keep those bigger vehicles, the trucks dropping off horses and the RVs from coming in during that peak traffic hour. In the evening traffic hour, it does not conflict with those peak times, and so we're just limiting them in the morning based on the traffic engineer's recommendation.
Shauna, are you able to ring me in here?
Excuse me?
Oh, is it, sorry, this is Amanda with the Paso Robles Horse Park, and I just wanted to jump in and clarify a little bit. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding as to how the drop-off of horses happen. So the drop-off of horses does not happen every day of competition. It actually, so with the competition running Wednesday through Sunday, the way that it's designed is for horses to be dropped off Monday and Tuesday. People are typically leaving another facility and coming to us. So our quietest times are actually between 7 and 9 a.m. What we typically see as far as drop-off times range from like 11 a.m. until about 3 p.m., realizing that nobody wants to get going late because of the inconvenience of unloading in the dark or returning home in the dark. So because a lot of these competitors use professional shippers and are going from competition to competition, we see very little traffic of the big rigs during those peak hours for these types of competitions.
Okay, this is Sherry. Thank you, Shauna. I appreciate that. And David, both of you for explaining that. That helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Sorry, and just for the public record, this is Amanda Diefendorfer with the Paso Robles Horse Park.
Oh, I thought you said Shauna. I'm sorry. I thought it was staff.
No, it's okay. I thought Shauna was ringing us in and out, so I was just letting her know.
Commissioner Davis,
that's my apologies for the confusion.
Commissioner Davis, do you have any other questions? Do you have any other questions?
That's it for right now.
Of staff?
No, I don't.
All right. Okay, thank you. And these are questions of staff right now, so we'll ask the applicant and her traffic engineer to come back once we open the public hearing. Commissioner Neal, did you have any questions of staff?
I did. So I caught on one of the slides, it looks like probably the Kava RV Resort to the west. Were they noticed for this meeting?
If they were within 300 feet, they were. I don't know off the top of my head if they are.
Okay. Because I think this additional venue may have impact on their facility as well. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kogler, do you have questions for staff?
Yes, Madam Chair. I had one of my questions was the same one Commissioner Davis put forward about dog shows, soccer events, whatever it might be, and the need to either limit or not limit those, and I think that bears some further discussion. Question I had about the new RV spaces. They're obviously displacing some, at least per the plan, some existing parking. I know there was reference to some overflow parking that they were thinking about, but does the conversion of what's more than 28 spaces to be 28 RV spaces cause any parking shortages on the property?
So that's a great question. I know that early on the applicant indicated, the different parking lots, parking area 1 and 2, you can see, and even where the new RV spaces would go, different parking spaces. So you see the shorter ones for just, regular cars and the longer ones for the haulers and the trailers. So I don't know if they are at capacity on an event, if they will be needing any additional parking, which then trickles down to needing more, parking for just regular cars. So we should probably ask that question and defer to the applicant.
All right, we'll do that under public hearing. Commissioner Kogler, did you have another question?
Yes, one other. The maintenance building sits on a DG pad and looks like there's at least a half an acre of open DG surfacing, which I assume maybe is for outside storage. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of screening or enclosure or anything that's proposed as a part of that.
So nothing has been proposed at this point on that remaining DG pad. We do have a condition of approval, condition number 9 to Exhibit A, that requires planning staff to review the final site plan, colors, materials for that maintenance building, any equipment screening that might be necessary. So we can certainly review additional if anything new comes up, but at that point, I think the commission would be looking for substantial compliance if there's anything really new proposed. But we will have another chance to review that.
So help me sort through your answer. Is there any requirement that the city would place on that to have it fenced or screened?
So the city is not, staff is not proposing that they screen that maintenance building, that DG pad. For if there is any associated storage, I think it's typical that we would see some conditions of approval for that, but since none were proposed with this application, I at this point didn't have anything to include in the presentation.
And maybe during the applicant's response, during the public hearing, they could respond to what that's going to be used for. Is it outdoor equipment? Is all the equipment inside the building? How is the maintenance function going to be handled? That would be all, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Christensen, questions of staff?
Yes, first I would just like to echo the point about item number 6 mentioned on page 1 of the Exhibit A regarding the events. I too am a little confused by that. I know it's mentioned also in the recommendation section about soccer games and sporting events not being necessarily a regular occurrence, but I do think that maybe we need to vet out a little bit of that determination. I love the project. I mean, I've always thought it's a great facility and concept, but I do think that we should maybe narrow down that a little bit. So if staff has had further discussion with the applicant on that, I'd love to hear it, and maybe if they could delve a little further into what it would entail. I did have another just one other little question here in regards to, again, in the recommendations, it was mentioned for a stop ahead, the pavement markings installed in conjunction with the SR46 sign. And maybe that's a question for the engineer on what the city is proposing to maybe do out there to avoid, because we are going to see an increase of traffic, maybe to avoid the collisions and things such as that. And I think that's pretty much the only two questions I have at this point. Oh, one other question. Again, and I know this was touched on, I think Commissioner Kogler mentioned it. I am curious about overflow parking and if they have a plan for that. And that would be a concern if they are to increase their events. I would imagine that part of their outreach is to also increase the amount of people that come and see these shows, which I don't blame them for that either. And I guess I was lying. I do have one further point of question for staff. I would like to see a better follow-up on the TOT for the camping. And I know she gave an explanation of that, but maybe something a little further from you on that would be helpful for me to understand. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I have a question. I'd like to ask staff, what were your conversations as this project was, as this conditional use permit draft was being developed, about what is the need for any more RV spaces at all? We're not increasing the size of the shows, we're increasing the number of the shows. And so I don't understand where the need for more RV spaces comes from when it's the number of shows, not the size of them. So did that come up in your discussions?
Regarding the additional RV spaces, it seems that in general the horse park has been very successful, and that they're just finding that they're in addition to wanting to host more events, the RV spaces seem to be very popular when people register. So I think at this point, I don't know if 56 is an arbitrary number or not. Perhaps the applicant can speak to that, but it just seems that they're wanting to accommodate the people that are attending the shows.
All right. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
All right.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Neal.
Yes. Yes.
So I was part of DRC, and when this item came forward, and the applicant said that they're not increasing necessarily the size of the shows, but they are turning folks away that have RVs and would like to stay already. So, and if you've been to a horse show, I've been to too many to count. Most of the riders have these trailers with RVs that are part of the trailer. So my guess is they'd like to stay on site to be close to their animals.
And Commissioner, I'm sorry, this is Commissioner Christensen. I just wanted to follow up on that as well. That point is well made. I think too, the lack of facilities for these types of rigs and trailers in standard campgrounds that we have would make it difficult for them to go somewhere else.
Okay. Any other comments or questions of staff or comments at this point from commissioners? All right, then let's open the public hearing. And if the applicant and your traffic engineer, Mr. Weinberger, if you would like to make some comments to us based on some of these questions or anything else you'd like to say to us, please go ahead.
Perfect. This is Amanda Diefender for Paso Robles Horse Park Director, and then as of 2018, also moved into the role of show manager, providing a little bit of background. And actually, I think this background is important because it helps explain why we became aware and have adjusted our plan a little bit with the number of shows that we'd like to host. At the end of 2017, we ended our relationship with the previous Southern California-based show promotion company. While they put on great quality shows for the owner of the park, the goal was always put on shows that were unique to the Paso spirit and really introduce the equestrian competitors to that spirit. Kind of like when you bring any other package franchise in from Southern California and plop it down in Paso Robles, all of us Paso locals can say it's not quite the same as that home-based, true Paso experience. So for that reason, we moved the show management over to an in-house team. As we kind of got our footing and kind of understood what was going on, we really assessed what the need was for our shows and how to best both partner with what benefited the Paso Robles community and what our competitors were asking for. And that's where you see these modifications to the conditional use permit inspired by. Addressing a couple quick questions. My apologies for jumping in too early on the peak hours. I'm happy to further explain any questions that you may have about the coming and going of our competitors. But they are week-long shows. Where the competitors move into the Paso Robles area for that week. And what is nice about the nature of these shows is competitors have various show times throughout the day. So we very rarely see a single rush of the day. I know the other question that was asked was the need for additional parking. Our proposed RV spaces are actually going into a place that were in the original plans for additional RV spaces. So we had never used those spots for overflow parking. As tempting as it has been for us, we try very hard to keep the parking in the designated parking areas and restrict even driving access down below for the safety of horses and competitors. And so for that reason, at the top of the RV parks where the roads veer off from the main road in, we've always blocked that out. So until now, it's been fairly unutilized space. So this won't really affect the amount of parking that we have. The additional 0.62 acre parcel will allow us some overflow parking, which would be nice as community interest in these shows grow. I will say as a Paso local, one of the things I take the most pride in is I have competed all over the country in this same sport of show jumping, and it does not tend to be a tremendous spectator sport. The Olympics love to put the sport on at 3 a.m. if that gives you any insight into the level of excitement that the general public has towards it. However, what I appreciate is that the Paso community has come out and support this sport in great ways. And so we want to have the flexibility for that parking. But with that, I don't see any need for additional parking beyond what you see in this conditional use permit. Why the more RV spaces, I think, was a question that came up a couple of times. At the current 28 RV spaces, we actually sell out RV spaces weeks, if not months, in advance of selling out the stalls available. So we're trying to make an adjustment to adjust to our competitors' needs. So the space for the humans on site is fairly comparable to the space for the horses on site. So that's the big drive for the need for the RV spaces. I think some great points have been put out that for this audience, it's very important to have close access to your horses. I myself personally, as a show manager, stay on site for every single show because, as I say, when you get that call at 3 a.m, you don't want to tell them that you'll be there in 30 minutes. And this goes for every trainer, every owner. Horses are living, breathing beasts, and they tend to do injuries and get sick at 3 a.m. and not at a more convenient time. And so you want to be close enough access to get there as quickly as possible, which is where the demand for these RV spaces come and why I really don't look at it as a direct competitor to being able to stay at a neighboring property. Owners and competitors that are not directly caring for the horses, that tend to fall on the grooms and the trainers. They actually definitely stay nearby at hotels and the higher end RV parks that kind of fit their vacation needs and desires a little more. The only other question was plans for screening with the new proposed maintenance building location and the neighboring DG pad. Part of why we wanted to move the maintenance building to this location is it is actually at a different elevation than the rest of the property anyways. So due to the kind of uphill elevation from the rest of the property, it creates a natural screen. However, for those of you who have been out to the park, I think you can attest to the fact that landscaping and screening the backgrounds is of top importance to us. And so we'll put in some other screening as well. I absolutely hate to see trash cans, equipment, cars, any of that in the background of somebody's favorite picture of competing. So if anybody draws a hard line on screening, it is I'm myself, and you can ask all of my staff how often I talk to them about they need to move that trash can, they need to have a bush in place to cover that up. So those are really important to me. Are there any other questions that you guys had? I know we also have Steve, who did the traffic study, on board, so he's able to answer any questions specific to that study.
Hey, good evening. This is Steve Weinberger with WTRANS, so I'd be happy to answer any questions about the traffic studies we did.
All right, commissioners, go ahead and just voice your questions. I won't be calling on you this time.
This is Commissioner Christensen. I guess one of the things I might have, Steve, is if when in the conclusions on in attachment 6 on page 6, you referred to the amount of trips and on show days, which I completely can understand. You've got an approximate out of 83 trips occurring during each of the AM and PM peak hours. Now, this is just kind of a arbitrary question, and it kind of links back to any other types of events. Was that just for these particular current expected additional events, like 75? What was the number there? Did I get that right? Was it 75 more? Sorry, I lost track. 15 shows. Sorry. Was that number just for those?
No, it was actually intended to present sort of a average event. And just if I can backtrack a minute, I did a traffic study for a project for the horse park in 2011. And then we updated at the end of 2019, finished in 2020 of this expansion. In 2011, when we did the original traffic study, through a series of assumptions on number of attendees per vehicle, et cetera, we estimated traffic volumes to the site for the horse park. And when it came around to this year, and we had some discussions of what is actually transpiring at the event, it was pretty clear that the volumes that we estimated back in 2011 were exaggerated in terms of the number of the volumes during the peak hour, because we're evaluating peak hour conditions out at the Airport 46 intersection. And so, but we made the decision to continue with those numbers just as sort of a worst case condition, because as part of the traffic analysis, we evaluated delay, queuing, and safety issues, and we assumed all the traffic to the horse park was coming in via the Highway 46 airport intersection. So, and I think we do state somewhere in the report that these volumes, based on the experience of the horse park now, the way they operate, the days people are coming in, leaving, that the volumes that we had estimated are an exaggeration. But we thought it'd be a good idea as far as a worst case condition to represent, based on the assumptions we looked at, to sort of test the operations queuing at the intersection. And that did lead to our recommendation of having the horse park schedule arrivals and departures so we don't have traffic arriving or departing during that 7 to 9 a.m. morning peak period. That was, if it did occur then, that's when we would have some queuing issues. So that was...
I guess my question is alluding more to the, not just the increase in shows, which I think would be ideal, but any other events, any other larger events, any other sporting events, things like that.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like there's any other requirement, here for those. So that's kind of what I'm alluding to, and I apologize for not being clear.
Okay, so the additional events, we did reference in the traffic study, we did recognize that there have been some soccer games there. I think Cal Poly may have the local tournaments and so forth. And, based on our discussions with city staff and those events taking place, the soccer events didn't seem, in my opinion, like they were going to generate, they were certainly not going to generate as much traffic as what we were estimating in the traffic study. So for events like soccer games or similar sporting events with, sort of a minor to moderate crowd coming in, that was going to be less than what the horse park brings, that we recommended that the recommendations from this report would still apply. So no scheduling of those events where we have traffic arriving or departing from 7 to 9 a.m. Because that was going to be the critical issue in terms of queuing. As far as we also talked about large gathering events, we understood that there was a 4th of July event held there at one time. we were told by the applicant there was no more plans for that type of event. But what we did recommend in the report that if there were to be a large gathering event held within a confined time, a few hours, a short duration type event, that the horse park provide manual traffic control out in the intersection of 46 and Airport to accommodate that. So think of a concert exiting in the evening, that type of event, or the recommendation is to have, contract with the highway patrol to have flashers out at the intersection to really control exiting of traffic.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that info.
Perfect. And then I realize this is Amanda again. One, I just wanted to touch on for the larger events, while we don't have any plans to have those currently, such as the 4th of July event, I will make comment that we did actually require and then support the cost through our sponsorship of Paso Pops. We did require them to work directly with Caltrans to mitigate that traffic issue as we became more familiar and understanding of it in the second year. So that is of the utmost importance for us to continue. The other comment that I believe was brought up is our community outreach plans. So since the park was founded and opened, one element of the park that has been started is the Paso Robles Horse Park Foundation, with the mission to dedicate creating opportunity within the community to support the relevance of the horse in today's world and its unique ability to enhance education, health, and quality of life, particularly for the handicapped and underprivileged. And I share that with you because that is really what drives our primary community outreach plan. So when we create community programs that are not maybe horse competitions, but give the Paso Robles community access to horses, that we always come back to that mission and look at how are we fulfilling that mission, how are we giving the local community access to this facility that we're very proud to have brought to the Central Coast. And, it's a facility that has been recognized nation and internationally as far as the horse world goes. But we want to make sure that Paso Robles gets to feel some ownership and really gain some access to the facility as well. So that's what drives those community events.
Any other questions from commissioners for the applicant? All right. Thank you very much. Those were, you helped us a lot, I think, understanding what your intentions are. Thank you. And now, do we have any members of the general public who have called in with comments or questions?
This is Darren. We understand that Dave Colmar might be trying to call in. He may have been queued up for a different item. So if we can wait a few minutes and get Dave squared away just to make sure and give him a chance if he would like to say anything.
All right.
Darren, can you hear me?
I can, Dave. So we had you in the wrong queue. Now you are involved in the horse park project. Have you heard everything up to now?
I did, and you missed my 20-minute explanation on everything. So I guess that was in the wrong queue. But Amanda and Steve did a marvelous job.
Could you identify? Excuse me. Could you identify yourself and state your name and address for the record, please?
This is Dave Colmar. I'm with the Paso Robles Horse Park. I'm currently at 1545 Willow Creek in Paso Robles.
Thank you.
Darren, real quick, I know we've been working on this for a long time, and we go back to 2011 and 12 when this whole thing evolved. And I want to thank you and your staff and Darcy especially. These things can sometimes be painstaking, but you've really done a yeoman's job at asking us to provide the necessary information. We think that we have an incredible facility for the community, and we really want it to grow and to do more. So I'll stop there. I think you have everything that was in the report from Darcy. Amanda's jumped in here with a number of comments, And I appreciate the fact that Steve Weinberger is also on the call.
Thank you. All right, then I will call. I assume there are no more public comments. Darcy and Darren, is that correct?
No, there are not.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we will close the public hearing, and I'll bring this back to I believe we have. I'm wrong, and if you have any additional questions for staff or comments, please let's hear them now. So why don't we start with Commissioner Davis?
Thank you, Roberta. Yeah, I don't have any additional questions of staff. I just think that Amanda answered a lot of my questions regarding the spirit of the facility and the community outreach, and that was helpful. I think our traffic engineer and our city engineer answered my traffic questions. I think, Joel, thank you for your DRC input. And I think I am fully on board with the additional spaces. I do think that people need to be next to their horse, their beloved horse. And so I'm not as concerned about maybe competition with the lodging industry. I still don't know where I'm at on the TOT aspect. I think that's another question, as Darren pointed out to me, but I'm very much in favor of this project. I think we're fortunate to have it in our community. I'm inclined to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Neal.
I echo Commissioner Davis's comments, and I am quite pleased that the Horse Park is successful enough to be able to add dates, and I'm really happy they're in town. So that's it for me.
Good. All right, thank you. Commissioner Kogler.
Similar comments. I think this is a phenomenal facility that I hope to actually experience sometime this summer, since I've really never been anything but looking in the gate. And I liked a lot of what I heard that Amanda commented on, and her comments, if I understood them correctly, towards the kind of community outreach, still had a horse component to it, getting people to come in and have more exposure to the animals and maybe some of the sporting events and so forth. It didn't really speak, though, to dog shows, soccer games, and 4th of July fireworks. And so, again, I would go back to the point that Commissioner Davis first expressed, that I'm not sold that this has to happen, but I'm just wondering, is there any need, and maybe this question of staff, to think about at least some starting point for the number of days or the number of events or something like this, rather than just being simply carte blanche?
Madam Chair, this is Darcy. If I might chime in, to get the conversation going, I have a slide that should be coming shortly, some possible changes to the conditions of approval that the Commission may consider, such as adding more language about the ancillary community events for a certain number of times per year. Maybe that number is, we could say 20, and then that would get you to 95 events or days per year, but that doesn't take into account the community outreach events. I didn't think that far forward. So just to get the conversation going, per Commissioner Kogler's comments, hopefully that has appeared on your screen by now, and just to get that conversation going.
I'm not seeing it on the screen.
So let's give it a few more seconds. I think we had a 15 to 30 second delay, and depending on the computer.
All right.
All right, so I'll go ahead and read it. So we have right now, condition number 5 is, it says the equestrian events held at the Paso Robles Horse Park would be limited to the maximum of 15 shows per year, for a total of 75 competition days per year. Events shall be held in the daytime hours and end at dusk. So kind of a sub condition to that could be, or you know, totally new condition, ancillary community events, i.e., dog agility shows, soccer games, may be held at the park facility up to X times per year. So staff is suggesting, you know, just an arbitrary number, perhaps that's 20 times per year. Condition number 6 also accounts for the competition events, and I'll read that. It says, in addition to competition events, the park can host various clinics and community outreach events throughout the year where horses will be on property. Due to the outdoor nature of these functions, event days are limited by weather conditions, daylight hours, and time of year. So the condition number 6 may also, the commission may want to reflect a number of times per year that they're allowed to do that.
All right, thank you, Darcy. Commissioner Kogler, did you have any further questions or comments on that for now?
No, I just last comment. I don't feel like I've got a really good basis to fill in the X in this, but it seems like maybe some number should be there as a starting point, and if it had to get changed in the future due to the success. When you talk about any kind of athletic tournament, be it soccer or some other turf games, you can draw a lot of people. And so that may be fine, or that may be in conflict, some of the traffic concerns or something else. So it seems like this is asking for a number, but truthfully, I don't know what number would go in there.
Okay.
Madam Chairperson, this is Dave Colmar again, if I could. I think number 6 really does.
I'm sorry, Dave, we've closed the public hearing, but tell you what, let me ask the last commissioner and then my comments and questions for the commissioner questions where we are right now, and then let's come back if the commissioners would like to continue to talk about this, and then we'll bring you in and we can revisit if the commissioners are thinking that they would like to have a number determined to go in there, okay? So can you hang on for just a few more minutes? Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner Christensen.
Thank you. I'm going to echo Commissioner Kogler's sentiments in just a sense of I love this event center. I think it's fantastic. I think that there needs to be some method for these for the applicant to get to additional shows. I agree. I'm not sure what that number is per se, but maybe starting out at a smaller number and then working their way up, or allowing them to provide something to DRC. But I think getting a method in place now would be the best thing to prevent any previous, issues further on. That's just my comment on that. And the only other comment I had is I was noticing number 12 on Exhibit A about the stop ahead markings. And this may not just be for this applicant. This may be more of a city engineer's issue that I think we really need to take into account the type of traffic that we will be having coming in to that area by the water park, coming into the stop at 46. I think that you're going to have some large vehicles. They're going to be moving, and giving them plenty of notice and reminder to be slowing down as you come around that turn, because people pulling out of the water park at times, they're maybe oblivious to how long it takes for a rig like that to stop in an emergency type setting. So that's just a comment I wanted to make towards that. I'm hoping that maybe we can commit to a little bit more than just some stop ahead markings. And I'm not necessarily sure that needs to be part of the applicant's requirement, but I really am concerned with that. And other than that, I love this project. I love this facility. I think it's wonderful. And I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I would add to the discussion on if there should be a limit to the other types of activities at the park, a limit of days or whatever it might be, is that I would probably be more interested in a limit on the hours when traffic would be generated, as in during the summer when the water park is closing and people are leaving. And I travel on Airport Road quite a lot, and that is a zoo. indescribable when the backup, and it's just not good at all when the in late in the afternoon and evening in the summer, especially on weekends. So I would personally, if there is to be a limitation placed, and I'm not quite there to say that we should on the other types of events, but I would personally be at least as concerned, if not more concerned, about maybe perhaps limiting the hours for traffic purposes than I would the quantity or the days of the week or some such thing, or seasonal, whatever it might be, because the water park is such a potential traffic competition, and it's just so dangerous at that intersection. So maybe we can bring this back to staff. We weren't able to see your exhibit, Darcy, but you did read it to us. And it does seem like there needs to be I'm really concerned about putting a number or limitation on the Paso Robles Horse Park that we all come up with on the phone at a public meeting. Is there a way that if the commission was in favor of supporting this project in all aspects except preferring to see some kind of limitation on the additional types of activities? Is there a way that that could be done, and that there could be input from the applicant and from the city to come up with a reasonable modification or limitation on those events in the future? But then we could still approve the project this evening.
So it seems like the question of limiting number of events or the time of day that the event is occurring, or the time that people are traveling to the event, it seems that it would be appropriate as far as the ability to enforce that, to put it in these conditions of approval tonight. So I think the conversation about the community events, which do not have horses on the property, those could certainly happen during summer months, whereas it seems like the community outreach events where horses would be on the property, we've been told by the applicant that those are outside the summer months, so it shouldn't conflict with traffic, summer traffic on Airport Road. But I do think that having it in the conditions would be the best route forward in order to enforce.
All right, I'm at a loss of how to begin to put an intelligent number to a limitation if that's what the commission is looking to do. So first of all, can we just get a kind of a straw vote here, or comments? Is that what the commission is? I hear two commissioners who I think are pretty clear that they would like some kind of limitation, and two, I'm not sure what you're thinking.
Can I just clarify? This is Commissioner Christensen. I think for me, the most important thing is just that we have a method, whatever that number of community events would be, that, because I don't want to limit them to do other outside events either necessarily, as long as it's done, as long as we have some method to get there, I guess. Because I agree, I'm not sure I can put an immediate number on that right now either.
Right, and that's what I was hoping that we could come up with. But I don't. I mean, if staff is saying that number needs to be decided tonight, I don't see a path to that. So hopefully somebody else sees one and can share it with us.
Madam Chair,
I'd like to.
Go ahead, Commissioner Davis.
Commissioner Davis. Okay. Just tossing some ideas out there. I think Amanda did a good job of saying telling us about the spirit of the community. I think it might be too early to dictate hours. She doesn't even know what those community events might be. And, in the summer months, that might be when she can reach out to the youth in the community best. So I'm not so sure I want to put restrictions on the time of year or the hours yet, although we're all concerned about traffic. I think having kind of a limit on the number of events is a good start, like Darcy has suggested in number 5A. That's my personal opinion.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Neal, you had some comments?
Yeah. I would be most interested in limiting the non-horse events, and I think that may be what we're talking about. I think the horse events on the off shows are going to be small enough clinics or some horse personship that they won't be that large, but it's the the non-horse events that I think I'm interested in a potential limit. And maybe there's a question to staff if we could require if there's such a thing, a special event permit, so that staff can review the event before it happens. I don't know, it's just a question.
So this is Darcy again.
Is that possible?
Yes,
go ahead.
So certainly there is an opportunity to have staff review the different community events. I think the most appropriate would be possibly the temporary use permit, which would require the applicant to submit an application. There is a fee associated with that. I believe it's around $100, and that would give staff an opportunity to review it. I think that would help answer that question.
All right. Hang on, I'm having a technical difficulty right now. Give me, I'll be, like my earbuds just died. So hold on and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry.
This is Commissioner Christensen. I had a question for Darcy on that. So that would go along with, say, a number of times per year, say whatever those events number that we agreed to would be. Is that what you were suggesting?
Well, I think that there's an opportunity. You could do it, one of many ways. So you could have both limitation on the number of community events that would be happening per year, and require that each event obtain a temporary use permit from city staff, or choose either one of those, by itself. So I think there's different ways you could do that.
Could that be limited to non-horse events so that horse events would not be required to do that?
Yes, I think we could clean up condition 5A to say, the ancillary community events, non-horse events may be held at the park facility up to X times per year with approval of a temporary use permit. Maybe with each event, be more specific, each event approved with a temporary use permit if that's what the commission is desiring.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Kogler, if I might speak for a moment.
Yes.
I guess my interest here is not to limit them to anything that's unreasonable, nor necessarily to cap on the number of times. It's simply to manage the impacts of any gathering, and it really focuses on traffic at the intersection at Airport Road. And so I like the idea, Darcy, of is there some kind of a special permit that on a case-by-case basis could be issued for any ancillary event that is non-horse related. And that would give staff presumably the ability to put a condition in there, for example, to control arrival times outside of 7 to 9 a.m. during the week for a case in point with traffic conflicts. I would be comfortable with that rather than trying to kind of throw a dart at a number to fill in the X, as long as we could control the impacts of those ancillary community events.
Any other comments from commissioners?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Christensen again. I would think that sounds like a very good idea as well. I would agree with Commissioner Kogler on that. I think that may be the solution or the method that we were looking for. Thank you.
All right.
This is Commissioner Davis. I tend to agree with Commissioner Kogler's idea. So that's my input, Chairwoman.
Okay, good. And I would tend to agree with that too. I think it seems like a workable approach. Are there any other discussion from commissioners on any other aspects of the project? If not, I would entertain a motion. And I think we would need to reflect the special permit aspect that we were just discussing.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Neal. I'll give it a whirl.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to move to approve draft resolution A, approving conditional use permit 19-10 and plan development 19-12, subject conditions of approval, including the requirement for that a temporary use permit be required for all non-horse related events.
I second that.
And who was that? Was that Commissioner Christensen? Okay. All right. We have a motion from Commissioner Neal, seconded by Commissioner Christensen. Is there any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, I will ask for the vote.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
He's recused.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with Gibson abstaining, and they have left the room.
All right. Thank you. And the Paso Robles Horse Park is a fabulous facility, and best wishes to you for, I hope this helps you become even more successful. Okay, let us move on to agenda item 3, which is variance 20-01, Market Walk, short-term rentals.
Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, this is Commissioner Christensen. I will have to recuse myself from this one. Conflict of interest, so I'll meet out. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Neal. I, too, will have to recuse myself as we're the contractor building the project.
All right, thank you. And has Commissioner Gibson come back on?
Yes, I've rejoined the meeting. Thank you.
All right, so we have 1, 2, 3. We have 4 commissioners present, so we still have a quorum, correct, staff?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's open this up for the staff report.
Yes, this is Darren Nash. This is the item before you is the Paso Market Walk. This was a development plan and a use permit approved back in 2017, approving a approximate 16,600 square foot mixed use facility at 1803 Spring Street. The project included mixed use of restaurants, retail, commercial items, as well as some residential units. So 2 of the buildings included some residences on the second floor. There were 3 residences in Building B and 3 additional in Building E for a total of 6 units. The site is located on Spring Street. Again, it's 1803 Spring Street. The plan should be coming up shortly is the site plan that shows the buildings. The project is currently almost finished with the construction of the project. So it's fairly soon that this project will be completed and open for business. What's before the commission tonight is a request for a variance. The project is requesting that the 6 residential units be short-term rental units as opposed to long-term rentals. They have been approved as residential units. The conflict that we've run into is this project was under construction. These residential units the permits for these residential units were approved and under construction prior to the short-term rental ordinance being adopted. So when they've applied to the city for their short-term rental permits, it's come to the conclusion that they are inconsistent with the ordinance. And the reason being is the standard that no more than 2 short-term rental permits can be issued per legal parcel. This project originally was 4 parcels. Part of the project was to merge them into one bigger parcel to allow for the buildings along the rear of the property there, and to put in a situation where the buildings do not cross property lines. Since we're dealing with one parcel and not the 4 original parcels, the ordinance does not allow more than the 2 short-term rentals per one parcel. If this parcel stayed at if this project stayed at 4 parcels as it was originally, it could have up to 8 short-term rentals. The applicants are requesting the Planning Commission to review this variance in order to allow 6 short-term rentals. Some of their comments relate to the intention of the short-term rentals with the original development of the project. Staff was in discussions with the applicants with the original project that there would be some short-term rentals. The project conditions of approval, the project description is not specific on the marketplace of the short-term rentals being provided. The short-term rental ordinance was changed after the entitlements, as mentioned before, and construction of the market began prior to the short-term rental ordinance. These units were constructed and permitted through the city without kitchens. The reason that they were approved that way was because the intent of being short-term rentals. The property originally had 4 parcels, as mentioned, but merged in order to accommodate the project. The applicants indicate that if there were still 4 parcels, the ordinance could allow up to 8 short-term rentals. The 6 short-term rentals would generate transient occupancy tax. What I've got coming up next is an aerial photo of the site, and it shows the property lines where they were on the site. They have been merged into one parcel, but this just shows where the parcels were when this project originally started. This project merged the lots in order to accommodate the mixed uses on the site in a manner that protected the oak trees, that didn't create a situation where buildings were built over property lines, and it was necessary to merge the lots from the 4 lots into the 1. But this conflicts with the short-term rental ordinance. So that is why there's a request for a variance. And in order for the Planning Commission to approve a variance, it is necessary to make findings that conclude that the situation is a unique circumstance and not a special privilege. In the case of the Paso Market Walk site, we've identified that this site is unique based on size, location, physical constraints, and timing. It may take a minute for this slide to come up, but I'm going to go forward with explaining some of those unique circumstance criteria. This project is half a city block. It's rare to have a developable site that has over 300 linear feet of frontage on an arterial road such as Spring Street under one ownership. The site is accessed by public streets on 3 sides and a public alley on the 4th side. So having a large developable parcel in the Uptown Town Center Plan area under one ownership is unique. And the fact that the large site has over 300 linear feet along Spring Street with a mixed-use zoning is also a unique situation. This site had some physical constraints, and those were the oak trees on site. I think originally there were 3 oak trees. One oak tree was allowed to be removed by the City Council. There are 2 oak trees that remain, and the project was designed to accommodate those trees. I think if you've been by the site, you can see that the buildings are set back significantly from Spring Street in order to accommodate those trees. And then comes the timing of the project, and the fact that the project was under construction and the short-term rental ordinance was adopted after is significant in this case. If it was a situation where the applicant needed to keep the property lines, it's possible that the project could have been designed to build buildings to accommodate those lines. And that wasn't the way it happened. And to come back now and try to put property lines in there would not be feasible. We do have the project architects that are available to speak, as well as the applicants on this project. So a possible variance finding that the commission could consider is that the Paso Market Walk site is unique based on the size, location, the physical constraints, and the timing of the construction of the project, and warrants the approval of the variance to allow for the 6 residential units to be short-term rentals. What I've got coming up next is the parking lot plan. I know that there's some questions about parking. We do have a parking lot plan here that shows the commercial parking in relation to the residential, and we do have the project designers, architects on the line that can help answer questions on parking. But with that, the options before the Planning Commission are to approve the variance as requested, or to approve the variance with modifications, or continue the item and refer back to staff for additional analysis, or deny the request, or not approve the variance based on not being able to meet those findings. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Darren. Let's go through our questions by calling you, so we keep this as orderly as we can again in these challenging conditions. Let's start with Commissioner Kogler. Do you have questions for staff?
I'm sure. Thank you. Perhaps more comment than questions. I think, well, obviously with the short-term rental ordinance being relatively new, I am concerned about adhering to all that's within it in terms of rules and restrictions. However, I do think this is probably a textbook case for variance, because there are evolving conditions that were changing that were really not the fault of the applicant in terms of the timing and sequencing of the combination of lots and the restrictions that subsequently came on STRs. So I think staff has laid out a very valid argument for a variance to occur. When we looked at this at the DRC, I was one that was kind of banging the drum on the parking. And I took a look at the parking in the field today, and there also was testimony from, I presume it might be an adjacent neighbor, or at least an interested party, that was sent out earlier today by Warren. And this may be consistent with the initial site plan, in which case my criticism should have come at that point had I been involved with this at that time. That is the tightest parking lot, and seemingly one that's going to be extremely problematic of probably any I've ever seen. With the tandem spaces that are there, which are very narrow, with the spaces that occur coming off the alley. It just so happened the photograph that was included by this member of the public showed a utility type truck backed in, and the wheels weren't even touching the curb stop, and admittedly it was backed in, but people will do that from time to time. And it looked like there was a trailer hitch that was already encroaching into tandem spaces 3 or 4. And so it may be too little too late, but I think this parking lot is a real design problem, and it's going to be a functional problem in the field. And I don't know that anything else can be done. It's probably consistent with the original plan, but I do think it's a weak link in this in terms of the efficiency and the access of parking. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gibson.
Thank you. I have some similar concerns to the Commissioner Kogler, but a slightly different take. I found it helpful to have the concerned citizens send in the letter and the pictures, and I did drive by and take a look at it myself today. So this is included in Addendum 1. In looking at the parking plan, the parking spaces that are identified as 1 and 2 are designed actually to be in perfect alignment with the number 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. But as constructed, they're not constructed according to plan. Parking lots, the pink ones and 2 were actually built to the east by, looks like a good 3 or 4 feet. And not only does Commissioner Kogler's comment, do I find that valid, about people pulling in either front ways or back ways, that's going to encroach on that long space that's supposed to be holding 2 cars, that the other 2 spaces are going to make it almost impossible to use that space altogether. So, again, just and simply put, is that it doesn't appear like that parking lot was actually built according to the plan. So I'm concerned about that. And I have a couple of questions for staff. Is that just for clarity, because I'm reading the letter from the property owner, Deborah Mann, and then Darren, you had indicated that some of the units were built without kitchens. In her letter, she stated, we specifically constructed units with this end use in mind, omitting full kitchens as would be necessary for a long-term residential unit. So can you clarify that there are units without kitchens, or they're just not full kitchens?
I'm understanding that they're not kitchens. That doesn't mean that there isn't a wet bar, something like that. But I would have the applicant or the architect who's designed the plans provide more information on that.
Okay, all right. We can wait to that point, I guess. So another question in regards to the parking, because I'm just trying to figure this out, because and be fair to all the parties involved, is that in looking at Exhibit A, there appears to be a contradiction, and hopefully you can clarify that. I had to blow this up because it was really hard to read, but in the addendum 1, the concerned citizens indicated that there was 2 2-bedrooms, 2 1-bedrooms, and 2 studios. And then you would also, that would indicate 6 units. And you had also, Darren, indicated that there were 6 on Exhibit A under the residential use. It says there's 5 1-bedrooms and 1 2-bedroom. So again, there's some consideration as to how many bedrooms are there actually there. And then down below in the parking calculation, it indicates there's 3 1-bedrooms and 2 2-bedrooms, so that's only 5 units. So wouldn't it be correct in saying that the parking calculation would have to be modified?
I would have the architect explain specifically the unit number, but there are 6 units. The buildings have been built. The units have been constructed per plans approved by the city. The site plan you have, Exhibit A, is the site plan that was reviewed at the Planning Commission level. But we can take a look at that clarification with the architect's response.
Okay, so my conclusion on that is that I'm just trying to figure out how many parking spaces actually are required according to how many bedrooms there actually are. And there seems to be a contradiction as to how many there actually are. So again, at that point, maybe we can get a clarification from the architect. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Davis.
Okay, thank you. A couple of things. I guess there's a question in here somewhere. My recollection when we voted on this was mixed use residential. And I know that there's some question. I remember residential apartments. I don't remember short-term rentals. So that must have been at a staff level, or if it was in the staff report, I don't remember seeing that. So in my mind, when I voted for this, it was long-term rentals was the concept. Now, I realize the situations the applicant is in this unique circumstance bringing this variance forward, but with the parking that everyone is concerned about, and if those tandem spaces are for short-term rentals, I'm a little concerned that it's going to be a bit of a nightmare trying to re-educate each person about the tandem parking and how that works, assuming that they can fit their vehicles in the tandem parking. I think long-term residences might kind of be with the program. So I'm a little concerned about the practicality of how to make this work. And I guess my question to Darren, the two STRs per parcel, was that specifically or uniquely to residential, or in that discussion with the short-term rental and the task force and at the planning commission level and then ultimately to the city council, was that two SCRs per parcel in any zone, or specifically, could you explain that to me?
Sure, and I think I'll have Lori. Lori Wilson is also working on this project, and she's a little more familiar with the short-term rental ordinance and some of these questions, so I'll have Lori fill us in on that.
Hi, this is Lori. Hi, Lori. Hi, I think I heard your question right. You're wanting to know if the restrictions for two short-term rentals per parcels is for all zones. And that is correct. So it's for R1 and then also the T zones downtown.
So the two SCRs per parcel was in residential zones exclusively, or 2 unit SCRs per parcel citywide?
So it's citywide, and I'll read that part of the table that applies to this. So it's residential portions of mixed-use structures consistent with Interpretation 2. And Interpretation 2 is no more than 2 non-hosted short-term rental permits will be issued per legal parcel. So that doesn't specify it being in a particular zone. It's across the city.
It is a citywide. Okay. That's what I needed to know. And could you clarify whether it's you, Lori, or Darren, if the tandem parking was always dedicated to the apartment complexes, is what I'm going to call them at this point? Is that correct? It was dedicated for that.
When this went through the planning commission, and this project actually went up to the city council because there was a zoning code change as well, tandem parking was a concern and discussed through the planning commission and council. This orientation being specific to residential was the outcome of that commission and council process. Originally, they had showed tandem parking in relation to employee and commercial type uses, and there was concern over that. But isolating the parking for the residential on the separate entrance where management can control that better separately from the commercial parking was the outcome of the approval. So the tandem parking was always intended to be for those residential units. The other thing to keep in mind is that prior to the short-term rental ordinance, the city didn't have a short-term rental ordinance. Any residential unit could apply for a business license for a short-term rental and get approval. So the short-term rental discussion wasn't a large issue at the time because the short-term rental ordinance was not being discussed at the time. And it was more of a decision, a business decision of the owners of whether it would be long-term or short-term. They had that option when this project was originally approved.
Okay, thank you. That's the only other questions I had of staff at this time.
All right, thank you. I would like to follow up on Commissioner Gibson's comments about the parking. I also drove by the site today. It sat at the curb and just pondered it for a while. And what is there is not at all what is on the site plan. I don't see how it works. Not only is the 3 and 4 extremely narrow, but that's just looking at it, without vehicles in it. So that's my impression. I can't verify what dimension it is. It looks very narrow. But spaces 1 and 2, as Commissioner Gibson said, on the site plan, line up, the back of 1 and 2 line up with the forward edge of 27 through 31 on the plan, and they're nowhere near that. They're multiple feet extending into and behind the tandem 3 and 4. I don't see how anyone could get out of 3 and 4 if there was a car parked in space number 2. So it just doesn't work. So, here we are, and I wish I had a magic wand to fix this, but I think this is a real issue. So I think if commissioners don't have any other comments or questions of staff at this time, shall we I don't hear any. Let's open this to the public hearing and hear from the applicant and the applicant's architects and designers about the concerns that have been expressed. So if the applicant would like to, I would usually say come forward, but speak up. In this case, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Hi, this is McShane Mernan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm the architect. I'm with Project M+. Thank you guys for putting this together. It seemed very thorough. I'm taking notes, so I'm going to just address certain things from my notes. So I'm going to start with the kitchens, just for clarification. Or maybe I'll start with the units. There are 6 units on site. They consist of two bedrooms, 2 one-bedrooms, and 2 studios, for a total of 6. The kitchens are minimal in nature. They are part of the units, an open plan. They consist of a kitchen sink, a refrigerator, and a microwave. Second, I'd like to talk about the parking. I haven't been to the site in over a month based on what's happening, so I haven't seen the spaces that you are talking about that are protruding. We can relook at the striping and the nature of the layout because it is a code issue and it is one that would have to pass ultimately. As we laid out and went through approvals, of course, the backing up radius and such, the parking lot works technically, so we don't have a concern in that sense. I hear the issue being brought up about tandem parking. We are overparked on the site. And if tandem parking is an issue, we have the ability to actually get rid of it. So we are required 29 spaces for commercial, but we're providing 31. So if we wanted, we could take 2 commercial spaces offline from the alley. I guess that would be space. I'm looking at the diagram. Space 30 and 31 could become residential parking, which would render spaces, I think, 5 and 6, or 4 and 6, gone. Another note on this diagram that is presented tonight within the pink rendered parking spaces, the residential area. We had a clear space in front of the trash enclosure, which is labeled as item number B, I believe. And we could provide a 9th parking spot in the residential area, or take one of the tandems to the area in front of the trash enclosure. And based on management's operational abilities, they can manage how and people park in this area.
If may I interrupt you just for a moment?
Sure.
And, could staff, with your cursor, show us where he is referring to the trash enclosure area?
The trash enclosure area is space number 7, and it's adjacent. There's a small trash enclosure in that corner of those 2 buildings, if you're looking at the parking plan.
So, Darren, it's actually the trash enclosure. There's an additional trash enclosure in front of parking spot number 9.
Oh, I see it. Again, adjacent to the street, between the building and the street.
And to clarify, parking space number 9 was not part of the project because it wasn't needed. We were trying to offer up a solution to remedy the tandem issue. So we're proposing that at this time.
And I'm sorry, I was so distracted trying to figure out where the trash enclosures were. Would you make your comment again?
Sure.
When you first were referring to them?
Parking spot number 9 that's currently shown was not permitted or part of the project because it was not needed. We have introduced it now to help remedy the tandem issue. So in lieu of parking 6, we could create parking 9, and that would take 1 tandem offline. And because we're overparked, we could take 31 of the commercial adjacent to number 2, take that offline as commercial, make it residential, and that would reduce stall number 4 as a tandem.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then I'd like to note, I've seen the photo that was presented by the public, and I agree it looks interesting to have a large construction truck in a normal parking space. So I just want to point out and keep in mind that that is a large construction truck, and it's not a normal vehicle that would be parking in that parking stall. I'd like to also address density quickly. I feel like, thank you, Darren, for that argument. And while we are 4 parcels down to 1, I would like to just add into that argument that across the alley, which is the other half of 1 city block that we reside in, the available VBR density is 12 because there are 6 residential homes. And then across the street on Spring Street, which is a similarly zoned commercial district, the ability or density of VBRs and VBROs is 10 because there are 5 parcels. So we're still well under what would be a normal density. And then I think last, in terms of design, the whole project is scaled for the neighborhood. We have seemingly 4 buildings, even though it's 1, and that's on purpose to help with the context of the urban scale. We've always been very considerate of how this building fits into the context of the neighborhood. including the residential parking and the way you get into it. So I think we're easily willing to make these concessions to change the tandem to whatever suits the neighborhood best. I think those are my notes and comments, so I'm happy to answer any other questions that come up.
Okay. The commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Merlin at this point? Or shall we go ahead and hear the rest of the public testimony?
I have no further questions.
I'd like to hear from the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't either.
Thank you. Thank you, and we may have some more questions to have you come back. So hang on. Okay. Who do we have next?
Is there anyone online who'd like to make a public comment?
This is Ty
That's what they're
Christensen,
asking for.
727 Oak Street. I'd like to make a public comment, not as a commissioner, but as a personal citizen of the city. Is that possible?
Warren, is that possible?
Who is this?
Ty Christensen.
Yeah, so Ty, you can represent your personal opinion as a member of the public. As soon as you're done making your comment, you need to then leave the meeting once again. So you're on.
Thank you. My name is Ty Christensen. I reside at 727 Oak Street. I also have an office building at 1937 Spring Street, approximately about a block and a half from the current property and the applicant's property. I attended the original meeting for the conceptual design when they invited us over to discuss it. I remember that at that time, there was the discussion about VRBOs and having the additional short-term rental places available. I also remember that there were issues from the surrounding community in regards to the concerns with parking, and I know that this development has met that. I also was a part of the short-term rental original meetings with the city. As that evolved and transgressed over to the ordinance itself, I was also a part of some of those meetings as well. I do feel that this would seem like the location for a variance, if there ever were one. The project was approved and started well before the ordinance actually took place, and actually I think that they made a lot of effort at the time as they were trying to get approved to satisfy a lot of us neighbors and property owners around the area. So I do understand some of the concerns because we do have an ordinance in place. I do, however, believe that was, in a sense, it would never envision the fact of having a project like this. And I do know that one of the main arguments made by a lot of the public members at the time, contrary to what I said, was that their concerns were they wanted short-term rentals in commercially located areas, not in R1 zoning, not necessarily even in R2 zoning, but more towards commercially located areas. And I can't think of a more appropriate place for that type of use. So I want to thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. Have a great evening. I will mute out. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to make public comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, can you give us your name and your address for the record, please?
Sharon Roden, 340 Panorama Drive, Paso Robles. Thank you for your attention. I did write in the letter and sent the pictures that you're referring to. Before, I just want to touch on a couple of things that were said tonight. When I was I went to a lot of meetings for the task force and the city council meetings and the planning commission meetings. And at each one of them, I asked if specifically, can we, since Paso Robles allows us to build 3 units on one parcel, can we have all 3 units be short-term rentals? I was told no in each one of those meetings, that they wanted it to restrict to 2 per parcel. And that process was reflected in the ordinance that was passed in August. Now, these meetings have been going on for 4 or 5 years. This is nothing new. And it specifically states that there are only 2 non-hosted short-term rentals. But what everyone seems to be skipping over is on that same table in the ordinance, the city clearly described these units, the multifamily residential apartment units, 4 or more dwellings per lot. Based upon that interpretation by this ordinance, they are not allowed to utilize any of them as short-term units, short-term rentals, if there are 4 per lot. Now, Darren suggested that, well, there used to be 4 lots. They could actually have 8 short-term rentals. Honestly, I could be a doctor if I'd gone to medical school. The bottom line here is that it is 1 parcel. It's not 4 parcels. It's 1. And it has 6 units, 6 apartments. So actually none of them, based on this ordinance, no matter when they got their permit. We started our permitting process on what we're building off of Vine Street. And we were told we could not permit those back 6-8 months before the ordinance was passed. So I think that's an issue that needs to be kept in mind, is the whole ordinance, not just that one aspect. And the parking spaces, I think everybody's had an opportunity to look at that. Parking spaces 3 and 4, I measured. And my matrix, Toyota Matrix, is 6 foot wide. It's a small compact. Those spaces are 7 foot 10 inches. You have less than a foot on either side to get out of the car. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not that skinny. So that's not going to work. And as far as the parking, the architect established that they were overparked. If you have 6 rental units there that have a total of, 10 people? 8-10 people, and they can invite people over too, you've taken up all your parking spaces. Guess where they're going to be parking? It's not going to be in their parking lot that they can't even get in and out of the spaces. And the truck that he was referring to in our neighborhoods, that's a truck. That's a work truck. It's not far off from an F-150. It's about the same as an F-250. It's not a huge oversized truck that's not going to be utilized in this area. So I would really hope that the commissioners take a strong look at this. They are underparked. They're not overparked, especially for the uses they have right now. And I don't think they should even be allowed to have 2 of the units as short-term rentals because they've got 6 apartments on 1 lot. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sharon. Do we have any more public comments?
Yeah, hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Could you state your name and address for us for the record, please?
Yes, Wendy McIntyre, 1912 Park Street in Paso Robles. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. First of all, I want to start out by saying I really like this project from the start. I love that something was being built on my end of the town that kind of did a lot for the community and I thought would add a lot to our community. And I understood it would be used by tourists as well. I sent in an email this afternoon that kind of went over the ideas that we're in a real housing crunch here. We don't have enough housing as it is, yet the places that were touted as being residential are now being saying, oh no, we're going to do short-term rentals on those after all. We don't need more short-term rentals. We need housing. And this would have been a great opportunity to introduce that. And I go more into that in my email, which I hope you've all read. But my other concern at this moment, which I left out of my email, is that this is being called a variance. And it's my understanding that that is not an appropriate use of the variance, which is supposed to be something that's used in cases where there's something in the way on a property that doesn't allow that property owner to use it in the same sense as the other neighboring properties. I live a block away from this property, so I know what's going on here, by the way. And so giving this property owner the privilege to use 6 units of the short-term rentals in lieu of the regular 2, which I even contest that, but that's special privilege, and that's strictly prohibited in the California and Paso Robles code. So I wanted to point that out, and I think that that's not the right way to put a variance, to ask for a variance, or that shouldn't even be a variance. And otherwise, that's all I have to say. I like the project. I'm just shocked. I walked by the site the other day and I saw that it said, "Oh, here's a sign, and we're going to do 6 short-term rentals, and there's a meeting tomorrow." So I'm really against that part of it. I'm for the project, but not that. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome.
Do we have other public comments?
Yes, this is Cheryl Wazorek.
All right, Cheryl. And could you state your address for the record, please?
Yes, it's 2280 Willow Creek Road, Paso Robles, California.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm the financial business manager for the owner of this project. And I just want to chime in here a little bit to say that when we put this whole project on a conceptual basis in the very beginning of time, it was always meant in our intentions was that these were to be short-term rentals. It was the only financial viable way that that project could come to be. And so I really want to stress that that was always our intention. Maybe we were lax in not making sure that that was put on paper in the beginning, because I know it was verbally expressed to everyone. So maybe that was our fault in that time frame. But and then when all the short-term rental ordinance was happening, we weren't blind to that. We just thought we already were approved. We already thought that that was already taken care of because we had discussed that. So when we applied for a business license is when this came to light that maybe we can't beat short-term rentals, and so that's where we are today. But I just wanted to assure everyone that we're not trying to pull something after the fact, or that wasn't our original intention. We were trying to be good stewards from the very beginning. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? All right, Steph, we don't have anyone else in the queue for public comments?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I'll close the public hearing and bring the meeting back to commissioners. for, well, actually, let's see, were there any outstanding questions or comments that we would like staff to address? I think maybe Darren, you had gone through the definition of variance. That might be worth going through again.
Sure. So the zoning code has a section that gives the Planning Commission the ability to approve a variance for situations where that are considered unique and where the commission can make a determination about a project that it's has uniqueness to it and not specifically granting a special privilege. And I think we outlined for this project dealing with the kind of the largeness of the project in the downtown and the uptown center under one ownership, the oak trees on the lot, or kind of a physical design element that all played part into the footprints of the buildings, where the parking was laid out, and also where the residential units laid out. So it's up to the commission to take in consideration those items that were listed and take a look at, some of the comments that were made and decide whether this has grounds for a variance or not.
All right, thank you. And staff, did you hear any other questions that need to be from public that you would like to respond to?
Yes, I think one of the questions that Mrs. Roden discussed was the multifamily residential aspect of the short-term rental ordinance versus mixed use. So in the table, the short-term rental table 2134030, there's a column for the non-hosted, which is the column when it's highlighted related to the 2 non-hosted short-term rental permits per parcel. But above that first portion of that column, it discusses the ability for multifamily, as Sharon indicated, but it also talks about mixed use. So there's the ability for residential portions of mixed use structures to have no more than 2 non-hosted short-term rentals per parcel, and that's what we're considering tonight.
All right.
Then I think Sharon brought up some of the parking, and I think parking has been discussed, and sounds like that the applicants have some options that maybe we can loosen up that parking lot. Also, as McShane indicated, he has not been down, it doesn't sound like, and looked at what's been striped and what's been put on the ground. It sounds like there's some opportunity to maybe take a look at this residential area. The project also hasn't been finalized in terms of the city going out, inspecting the plan. So I think there's the opportunity to work on these parking spaces and maybe put a better situation for the residential units and the parking.
All right. Thank you. All right. Do commissioners have any further comments? And I'll let you just jump in with your comments at this point.
This is Commissioner Gibson. I'm sitting and trying to reflect on everybody's comments. It would seem that if there was an entitlement that was given to the property owner back in 2017, there had to have been some original building plans. So maybe staff can address the issue that in the original building plans, did it indicate that these units would have full kitchens, or did the building plans indicate that the kitchens would be somewhat minimal, which would lead us to believe that they were designed to be short-term rentals all along?
At the time the building plans were approved, and I don't have those in front of me, there could have been the option for being long-term rentals or short-term rentals. So I'd have to go back and look and see what was specific to the plans, and I'd have to defer to the architect to let us know what the building plans were permitted. And I think he had indicated that they were built with a sink, a small fridge, and a microwave on a counter.
Yeah, correct. So I guess my question is, were if the building original building plans that were submitted and approved formerly by the Planning Commission, and I think maybe by the City Council, if they indicated a full kitchen, then the building plans would have had to have been changed. So, but if the buildings were built according to the plans and they're minimal as what is suggested, which that's pretty minimal, a sink and a small refrigerator, microwave does not really consist. Most people's minds would not be considered a kitchen. Then that would, to me, indicate, what the intention was all along. I guess the conundrum is that doesn't seem to have been clarity, or there isn't clarity at this point as to what the original intent was. At the same time, I concur with Commissioner Kogler that it seems like the property owners caught him betwixt and between, in that they obviously had a planning process and finally led up to approval. And then 2 years later, after their plan had been approved, an ordinance got adopted that is limiting the short-term rentals, and trying to be fair to the applicant, because that would seem like otherwise an unfair taking on the behalf of this commission or local government. I'm very careful about not trampling on the owner's rights as well, and trying to be fair. But I just find a lot of questions about what the original intent was, and trying to figure out a way to figure out what was the original intent. But I do have a serious concern about the parking. That parking that is in what would be the west northwest corner, to me, doesn't work at all. So I applaud and appreciate the comments of the applicant's architect and making some suggestions, but it would seem to me that that they would need to figure out how to rework the plan so it could be approved. And then I'm just curious as to why those two spaces weren't built according to the plan. That what sits there to the west that prohibits the from the parking spaces being built as proposed. And then lastly, and as was pointed out, that because I agree that truck, I drive a truck, F-350, and that truck is not any longer than my F-350. I don't believe it's just a truck with a service body. It looks like an F-250 with a service body to me. That my concern would be that we're going to have a lot of accidents, that people either pulling in front ways with a long wheelbase vehicle or backwards and running into each other. That I'm just kind of wondering if there isn't a solution to put up some sort of a barrier of some sort to maybe inhibit or just kind of make people aware or alert that they can only pull up so far, because those bumpers aren't functional the way they are now. So those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from Commissioner Davis or Kogler?
This is Commissioner Kogler. Regarding the parking, I don't know if we have an option, if the will of this group was to move this forward, to require a revised plan to come back to the DRC or not. Absent that, my thoughts are that maybe this needs to be tabled until these issues are resolved. I don't have as much of a problem with the variance component as I expressed before, but I do have a problem with this parking lot is not functional.
Commissioner Davis?
Sorry, I've been having some technical difficulties. I've heard everything. It's just my battery was going low, and I needed to get my phone charged. A lot of mixed feelings here. I understand what Commissioner Gibson is asking. You know, what was really the original intent, and can we get to the bottom of that? I know my recollection was residential, not short-term rental. So I'm kind of perplexed with all of that. Can you hear me, Commissioner?
Yes. So you're fine, Sharon.
Okay. And I do realize the situation that the developer is in. A little disappointed. I was looking forward to the residential mixed-use feel in that particular part of town at that location. Perhaps if the architect hasn't seen the parking, maybe we should table it and let them have an opportunity to look at the situation and bring it back, or bring it back to DRC. Those are a couple of thoughts that I had. Parking is definitely an issue. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I would. The parking doesn't work, period. That's a fact. And I don't think anyone would argue that that's an opinion, that's a fact. So that has to be resolved. And so there's a major component here that I personally would have a hard time being able to approve. I'm debating whether I would feel it could go to DRC, I suppose. I'm not really comfortable with that. I think, however, aside from the parking, which it has to be resolved, or you know, the issue needs to remain open until it is resolved. But aside from that, the bigger issue, perhaps, maybe not bigger in the end, of the vacation rentals, I agree with Commissioner Davis, and I think she and I were the only two who are still on the commission who were present for the original approval. And that was, as has been said, that was prior to Paso Robles passing the vacation rental, short-term vacation rental ordinance. So I don't recall them being considered vacation rentals, and I too was pretty excited about having a full-time residence and a real mixed-use project like this in our downtown. But if it had been stated or not, I don't suppose it would have mattered to our approval for the Planning Commission, because it wasn't an issue we could comment or really have an opinion on at the time before the ordinance went into place. So I do think that the applicant is totally caught in a time warp, that things changed radically in our city while the project was going on, and that's not anything that they could control in any way. So I believe that a variance for this is appropriate, given what I believe are indeed unique conditions. I'm really disappointed that we're seeing it now, that it's almost finished construction, and now we're dealing with it. That's really disappointing. But here we are. So to me, the parking is such an issue that I would have a real hard time voting on this tonight. So I guess the question for the four commissioners is, would anyone like to make a motion? And if so, how would you address the parking?
This is Commissioner Gibson. So I'm hearing pretty much unanimous opinion that the parking that is in that one corner of the project doesn't work. So in any event, it would seem that is going to have to come back. I would suggest that probably needs to come back to the full commission as opposed to the DRC. If we are going to table the final or the variance on this, which would lead to a final conclusion, I think, on this project, then perhaps we can ask staff if they can provide copies of the original plans to see what the intent was when the project was approved. Because again, if they're either going to show a full kitchen or they're going to show something very modified, and that should give, at least for me, would give real clarity as to what the intent was. If the building in essence is built the way that it was proposed and approved, then I personally am in favor of the variance for the short-term rentals, because that, if that was the intent, that was the intent. You can't retroactively penalize people after they've committed, funds and money and have started to build something. So that's where I'm at.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Kogler. I concur with that. In fact, I would offer a motion that we table action on variance 20-01, 1803 Spring Street for the Paso Robles Market Walk to a date to be determined, with input being provided back to the Planning Commission with the history of the rental units, the original design, the actual constructed units themselves, and more specifically, perhaps, that the applicant come back with a parking plan for the area in the corner of the site designated for the residential that actually will function.
I'll second that.
I would as
All right.
well.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner Kogler, second by Commissioner Gibson.
Madam Chair, can staff comment real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So just clarification, if we're going to basically send this back to staff rather than tabling the item, it would be better to word the motion as to continue the item date certain to May 12th. That way we can put this together and get it on your next agenda without having to restart the whole noticing process.
Madam Chair, I would
maker accept that.
Absolutely. It's a very good point. Thank you for making that, Warren.
All right.
And I will accept that as the second. That's very valid. Yes. Thank you, staff.
Okay. All right. Okay. So discussion, I'm going to jump in and start that. The Planning Commission's role is not to consider floor plans and what's inside the buildings. The uses inside, yes. The layout and the design, no. And so I'm a bit uncomfortable with the portion of the. I'm very comfortable with continuing the item to a date certain. I'm not entirely comfortable with the going back to look at history to see what the intent was, because I don't know where that would take us. And I don't know that we ever saw floor plans with that level of detail. Could you help us with the history and the memory element there? Because I just don't know that that's ours to look at, and I don't know if we ever saw it.
Right, and this is Darren. I don't recall exactly the floor plans for the residential units, but the fact is that the city approved building permits for what's been built out there. And those building permits were based on being prior to the short-term rental ordinance that gave the owner the ability to apply for what has been built. So I would agree that taking a look at the floor plans that went through the Planning Commission back in 2017 aren't really going to reflect what's been built at this time.
This is Lori. Can I chime in real quickly too? I did a little bit of research when we were looking or starting this variance and looking back at the entitlements to see what was mentioned. And I did find on the building permits that were applied for, and like Darren said, I wasn't around at that time. I don't know if those were presented to the Commissioner Council. But when they applied for the building permits in the note section on the title sheets, they did mention short-term rentals. So I just wanted to add that note.
And that was in the documents that came to Planning Commission?
I don't know that level of detail was provided to you at that time. It was provided when they submitted for building permits.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kogler, I would, I think the points that have just been raised are very valid. And I think the proper way to do this might be to withdraw my motion if the secretary will withdraw. And I would simply like to make that motion into an action that continues the variance subject to the submittal of parking information. And I'll word that a little differently.
The seconder accept that?
So I'm not, and this is Commissioner Gibson, obviously. I'm not quite sure what Commissioner Kogler just said. I'm not 100% certain, but I still think that it would provide a high degree of clarity, not just for the commissioner, but also for the finding of fact for the public as to why a variance was given. If what Lori is saying that she can provide, that would be pretty conclusive in terms of finding the fact for the public that that was the intent all along. So I personally would like to see that document presented. However, it's done at the continued meeting.
If I could make a suggestion that, as Commissioner Kogler has stated, to withdraw that motion, present the motion just at this point to continue it to the date certain with, and this, as an aside, request staff that we'd like to see that history. I could not support a motion that had that as, that was part of the motion, because again, I don't believe that floor plan reviews are in the purview of the Planning Commission then or now.
And if I might add, Madam Chair, I think the kind of the spirit and intent of the motion that I put forward was more as background information to help frame the issue. And but again, I think that tone could be part of the original motion that I made, or as I've stated, I would withdraw it and focus solely on the parking with, I think staff's heard enough to say that they probably would bring back some information on the history of the rental units as well. I didn't hear that the second was being withdrawn, so I don't think I can withdraw my motion.
Okay, so I wasn't sure who just spoke in between. So was that Warren that was speaking, or was that Commissioner Kogler that spoke both times?
Commissioner Field, I just spoke a moment ago about the context of the motion that I made and its intent. Okay, if that's what you're referring to. Well,
I guess where I'm at is that however we get there, it really doesn't really matter to me. So if we did a do-over on the motion and basically just said that we want to continue this to May 12th, I believe the date was. Obviously, staff, I think, has heard that we're trying to get some clarity about what the original intent was, and that would be fine. So I guess the bottom line is of not making a decision today, but making a motion to continue this till the date certain. And with that, I would agree to withdraw my second.
Okay. Thank you. So would you like to just work on, Commissioner Kogler, just some final wording for your new motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think it can be fairly simple, and I appreciate Commissioner Gibson's withdrawal of the second. I think simply the action is a motion to continue the variance action on 20-01 1803 Spring Street to the May 12th meeting of the Planning Commission meeting, with the information to be supplied to the Planning Commission focusing on a redesign for a workable solution for the residential parking lot that's a component of the project.
All right.
I will re-second that motion.
Okay, fair. Thank you. Okay, very good. Now, any further discussion on this motion? All right, so I think we're ready for the vote.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes to continue to the May 12th Planning Commission meeting.
All right, thank you, everyone.
So we'll have Commissioner Christensen and Neil rejoin the meeting at this point.
Thank you.
All right, are both commissioners back?
Yeah, I'm back. Commissioner Neal.
All right.
Yes,
Okay,
Christensen's
so,
back.
thank you. All right, so next is discussion items. Do we have any thing for that?
There are no general discussion items tonight.
Okay. And so then we have the consent calendar with minutes from DRC and Planning Commission for approval. Are there any comments on those?
Yes, Madam Chairperson, I need direction from staff as Commissioner Gibson. So I have a conflict of interest on the Paso Robles Horse Park. Should I also abstain from voting on the minutes involving that item? Did somebody respond?
I wasn't able to hear staff if they responded.
So the DRC or the commission's role is just to accept the DRC minutes as submitted. You're not actually approving them necessarily. So I think it's fine for all of you to vote on them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of both the Development Review Committee minutes and the Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Was that Commissioner Gibson?
Commissioner Gibson, correct.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept. Any discussion? All right, and let's take the vote.
Commissioner Davis?
You cut out. Is that Davis? Because I'm here and I say yes.
You got it right.
Commissioner Gibson?
Okay.
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen?
Yes.
Let's see, who am I missing?
Jorgensen.
Kogler, yes.
Oh, Commissioner Kogler.
Yes.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0.
It's harder when we can't see each other to keep track of what we're doing, isn't it? Okay.
Castillo's not here.
Do we have any other reports?
Yeah, quick update on a couple of our other subcommittees. The Housing Constraints Committee has not met since March due to the pandemic. We are looking to schedule a meeting for them to resume their work on the housing element in mid-May. So Darcy's working on dates for that right now. We do believe we've lost a month or two in terms of the housing element timeline. We still need to schedule a joint session with the Planning Commission and City Council on that. The date of that is still to be determined. Specific Plan Ad Hoc Committee, there have been no additional meetings for Specific Plan Ad Hoc as those specific plans have all moved toward hearing. Right now we're looking at the Gateway project to be on the commission agenda on May 26th, I believe. And the Beechwood specific plan is potentially on a commission agenda in June of this year. So I conclude the staff committee report.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commissioner comments. Okay, let's start with Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Davis, we can't hear you. I think everybody's batteries are getting worn down at this point.
Yeah, okay, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I just was complimenting you, Madam Chairwoman, on a wonderful meeting tonight. You have to read people's voices to know who's saying what, and you did a phenomenal job. So I just wanted to start with that. The one item, it's more a question. I don't know if it's now where I need to bring it up. I have some conflicts with DRC, some significant conflicts in October and November, and I'm looking to switch with someone in May and August, if any takers. I want to fulfill my commitment on DRC, but my teaching schedule has dramatically changed, and I have a DRC conflict September through November. So if anyone can trade with me for May and take October or November, I'm looking to make some switches. Maybe I can make some calls individually if that's easier.
I could probably do November with you.
This is,
and who's speaking?
Oh, this is Commissioner Gibson. I say I'm actually the short person on the totem pole here. I have the fewest number of months of anybody. So if you need me to cover a month rather than trade, I would just offer to just take on a month because I have less time commitment at this point than any of you.
I really appreciate that. That would be in November, Commissioner Gibson. Yeah. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll take on November.
I still need some coverage for October, and I don't know if Ty is available to switch. I can.
This is Ty. Sorry, I'm already on October with you.
Oh, that's right. Okay, gotcha.
That's what I was saying. If you want, I can. If you want, Gibson, if you want to take October, I'll do November. That gives her the 2 months. We'll just flip flop it.
Yeah, that'll work. I'll take on October. That'll work.
Okay, you guys are great. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. And yeah, just I appreciate the hard work. We had some tough items tonight, and I appreciate everyone's viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Neal.
No comment. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Kogler.
Madam Chair, this meeting turned out to be a bit of a baptism by fire with this virtual approach. It couldn't be easy for our first meeting, but I would echo the comment before. I think you handled it very adeptly, and I'd also like to thank staff because I think you came in with the right pieces at the right time, and this worked pretty well. Thank you.
Commissioner Christensen.
I would just say this reminds me of talking on the radio when you're in an airplane. Try not to step on the next person, but sometimes it's just impossible. So thank you for being patient, everyone. And again, I know it's been difficult, and staff especially too. I appreciate it. So that's it for me.
All right. And Commissioner Gibson.
I would just, again, echo what my fellow commissioners are saying. Roberta, I think, did a marvelous job, obviously, staff, in putting this together, and everybody's patience, and also the public, the people in the audience that participated. This is kind of becoming a new norm. I do a lot of Zoom meetings now, but this is difficult when you can't see each other and be at the table together. But I think everybody did a fabulous job.
Great, thank you. And I would echo all of that. That it's incredible how much body language affects our communication skills. And this is, I don't know about you, but I'm worn out. This makes it hard work. But yeah, this went actually amazingly well. So thank you very much to staff too, because you handled it very graciously and professionally. I have really not any comments about that, except I can hardly wait till we can do this the traditional way. Just one little notation. I know staff, I'm sure your professional life is pretty total chaos right now, but I do need to mention that our Planning Commission property ownership chart needs to be updated so we don't have any oopses on conflicts of interest. The one in my binder still has the old commissioners on it. So I think that's it. If there's staff comments.
Yes.
Really quick, I'm sorry. Can staff email those out? That was my only request. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
The conflict map?
Email out.
Yes. So our
email out what?
Is it the conflict map we're looking to have that emailed out?
Yes. Sorry. I just wanted to get that in before you came on. If you could email that out, it'd be great. That would be wonderful. Get that updated. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe our mapping department has that update completed, so we'll get that out to you as soon as possible. I think from staff's perspective, we'd like to thank the commission for sticking with this difficult meeting. This is a new commission. We're just getting up to speed, and then this hit. So this is definitely kind of a trial by fire for all of us on here. And we expect that this process will be refined as we move forward with additional items. But I think for a first meeting, it went very well. In terms of just what's going on with the city with the whole pandemic, we've had the city's emergency operations center activated since the second week in March. We basically meet every day to review the city's operational plans regarding the pandemic. At the same time, we're operating city services. So the community development department continues to do all of its permit intake, plan check processing, inspections, permit issuance, as well as all the planning entitlements and hearings. We're just doing it all remotely. So most of the staff is working 100% remotely. We've pretty much shifted to doing all the permitting process digitally, which is actually going surprisingly well. So we continue to move fairly efficiently on projects. So far, we haven't seen a drop-off in development permit activity. All the projects that we were working on before the pandemic hit, we're still have those on the books, and we're still moving those forward. And there's still a lot of interest in moving projects, especially the big projects like Gateway and Beechwood. So those are still priorities. The city has been working very closely with San Luis Obispo County on the pandemic response and kind of getting ready for that pivot to the phased reopening process. Governor made some statements today about how he sees that phased reopening working in California. We expect that based on that direction now that the county will move forward with issuing some standards and guidelines that will apply within our county. Based on that information, we're going to work with the Chamber of Commerce, Wine Country Alliance, Main Street, and the local business community to prepare for whatever that next phased reopening process is going to be. One thing to keep in mind, especially with these meetings and when are we going to get back to normal, all indications are this is going to be a long process and it'll be a long time likely before we'll be back to having the chamber full of people and meetings like we used to. So we are expecting and we're setting up this process for the long haul to deal with whatever the contingency is. If we happen to be able to get together and get back to normal earlier, that'll be good, but we are planning for this over the long term. So that's kind of the update on where the city is with the pandemic. In terms of projects for the Planning Commission, we continued the market walk to the next meeting, so that'll be on your next agenda. That's May 12th. There'll also be a general plan annual report for the general plan progress last calendar year. We also have a downtown park on Spring Street that we expect to be on the next agenda. That Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee meeting, we do expect that probably around May 21st to be scheduled. And May 26th would be the second Planning Commission meeting that is scheduled to have the Paso Gateway Annexation Project. You'll be hearing that item, making a recommendation to Commission on that. There's also an expansion to the parking area for the Ravine Water Park that's tentatively scheduled for the 26th. And then, as I mentioned, in June, we're looking at the Beechwood specific plan, where we're hoping to have the housing element ready for some sort of review early in the summer. So that'll conclude my report. Darren, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just to add, as well as the Gateway project comes to the Planning Commission fairly soon. I think we're going to be having some meetings with planning commissioners and staff coming up in May. So I know some of you have some questions related to your review of the EIR for Gateway, and so stay tuned on that. Keep those questions ready, and we're going to be reaching out to you to schedule some meetings to go over that. And that was similar to what we did with the Olson Chandler, and I think it was a benefit to staff and the commissioners to have those discussions before we got to the Planning Commission hearing. And that concludes my comments.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Does that conclude all staff comments?
Yes.
All right. Well, yeah, those meetings sound like a very good idea. That was very helpful the last time. I have one quick, very simple question. What do we do with our binders? How can we turn them in?
Yeah, probably your best bet is if you take them to the annex where we have the utility billing office or the water billing, and 821 Pine Street, and drop them off there. That's the only city facility that's currently open to the public. So I'd recommend you drop them off there, or you could just hold on to your binder. We'll give you the new printed version, and you could just put it in there yourself, which may even be easier.
That sounds like a good plan to me. We'll just hang them on to them, and okay. That sounds good.
Agreed.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And meeting adjourned.
So do we have a motion on that?
Good night, everybody.
I'll move that.
Oh, Sherry Davis makes a motion to adjourn. I made a motion to adjourn. I'm fast tonight.
Unanimous consent. We don't need to vote.
Okay.
Correct. You can
All right, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night. Good night.